Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our HARC afternoon webinar series, Thursday afternoon. Today, we're going to hear the experts share strategies that agencies can implement to alleviate the concern of the unknown and make operations more efficient. My name is Tom Suter. I am the CEO and founder of the Advanced Technology Academic Research Center, and I have the pleasure of moderating the panel this afternoon. And I'd like to welcome all our attendees. A special thanks to Angela Tripp, Brian Koenig, Dan Nurmi, and the rest of the Anchor team. They kind of helped us put it together. I really like this topic. We hadn't really addressed it at ATARC as much as I would like to, so I think we're going to kind of look forward to starting the conversation this afternoon. So what we're going to have is we're going to hear from our panelists. It's going to be followed by a Q&A session. We're going to have some diehard poll questions coming in here too, and that we need some answers. We're going to get some answers from you all on. And please submit questions at any time. We get our best questions. They're not coming from me. They're coming from our well-informed audience out there. And you can just put them submit them in the platform at the bottom of the screen. And we're going to be answering these poll questions. That's to ensure that you receive your CPE credit. So if all my panelists can hop on, we'll get things going here. Great. Great. Okay, we're doing well. I think we got everybody we're going to get. So I know Angel is with us today. She's not feeling well, but you know what? She's a trooper. She decided to make it anyway. So thank you, Angel. But just real quick, some quick introductions, and then we'll get into the discussion with each of the panelists. But we have with us Sunil Madhugiri, Chief Technology Officer, Office of Information and Technology at U.S. Customs and Border Protection at the United States Department of Homeland Security. Hi, Sunil. Did I get the pronunciation of your last name okay?
Absolutely perfect. It sounds Italian, so it's good. Thank you very much. So.
No problem. No problem. Next, we have Angel Phaneuf, Chief Information Security Officer at the U.S. Army Factory, U.S. Futures Command. Angel, how are you?
Hi, it's actually Angel Phaneuf, and I'm from Army Software Factory out of Army Futures Command.
Okay, sorry about that, Angel. Get that corrected. We also have Crist, Chief Cyber Operations and Development Command, Control, Communications, and Cyber Systems at U.S. Transportation Command at the U.S. Department of Defense. How are you doing, Chris?
Doing fantastic.
Yeah, good to see you again. I'll have to ask you about your PhD and how that's coming. Next, we have Stacy Watson, Enterprise Solutions Division Director, Computer Hardware Enterprise Software and Solutions at the United States Department of Army. How are you doing today, Stacy?
Doing great, thank you.
Thank you. And then last but not least, we've got Dan Nurmi, co-founder and Chief Technology Officer at Anchor. Good afternoon, Dan.
Good afternoon. Thanks so much for having us today.
No problem. Well, maybe we'll have each of the panelists, talk a little bit about their challenges that they're having with this executive order and how they're handling it. Maybe we'll start off with you, Sunil.
Sure. Good afternoon. So, like as you mentioned, currently the CTO of a CBP, a large organization with 65,000 employees. And as you know, our primary role is keeping the United States border secure and also facilitate travel and trade. As that's a huge. So as you can imagine, almost 1/3 of the U.S. economy is based on trade. As you know, we're responsible for that. So U.S. economy is at $21 trillion. About $6 trillion of that comes through our ports. So you can imagine we have a very big, large mission there. Same thing on the passenger component of folks coming in and out of the country. COVID last 2 years have been very challenging, as you can imagine, especially for funding also. And some of the money we have been getting, we are, in case you folks are listening in on the panel, if you don't have a global entry, please do get global entry. It'll help us for permission. Us to is fairly quite ahead actually. We are doing very well in that. What initially we did was we were looking at with the low-hanging fruits, trying to solve those problems, and then trying to tackle the larger problems and the larger databases and larger software information applications we have. It's been definitely challenging, but one thing which has changed, I would say, last 4 or 5 years especially, is also the help from the vendors, right, and also the system integrators, everything else. People have learned how to do some of these components and how to do some of these technologies. So that has helped. We are doing a whole bunch of other things. We're trying to automate wherever we can. We call the last mile. So software engineering, you can go certain. It can only go so much along. I'm also a software engineer myself from my previous life. So because of that, we are in the process of automating a whole bunch of things. As you can imagine, especially in the port of entries where we are working, there's a lot of work which can be automated. So we are doing that, and especially especially with the executive order, what we need to follow, we are doing our best. I think we are doing a decent job, but we need help from the industry. So folks who are listening in, if you guys want to talk to us more, we'd be very happy to talk to you also.
No, great. I haven't seen Sonny over there in a while since COVID.
Yes.
It looks like you all are back in the office. Are you actually?
Yes, I'm back
visitors?
in the office. Yes, we're back in the
Okay.
office. In fact, he and I are the two people in the office all the time. He's my boss, so I'm always here. So.
Yeah, we've worked with Sonny when he was at GSA as well as
yeah.
when he was actually in Hawaii.
That's right. He told me, also
Great
Treasury,
guy.
right? And Treasury also. So he told me that. I told him I'm talking to you guys today, so he's pretty happy.
Okay, great. Well, I think my face broke my video camera. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know how much I'm going to be able to do tech support as I moderate this thing, but I can hear you all and see you all. Angel, you want to maybe talk a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, so when we talk about SBOMs, it has like the same place in technical organizations as any asset management artifact that should be treated that way. At the Army Software Factory, we're doing, I would say exactly what the speaker before me just said, we're doing the best we can right now. I think Log4j, what happened there, you can go on LinkedIn, you can read our blog post, how we were able to mitigate some of those risks immediately in a real timely fashion. We're also a small shop. So when people think of the Army Software Factory, we're not thousands, we're a couple hundred. So it's easy for us to have that in-house success. Without knowing a lot of the components that make up your software assets, organizations have no way of being able to know if the asset really poses the risks to their posture accurately. So I think a lot of us are just trying to do the best that we can. I think that a lot of us have already been doing the best that we can and continue to push that boundary. And the executive order came out and only helped us push that initiative further. I think the more that we have a good understanding of what SBOM is within the government, the more we can tackle it from abroad. I know from the Army Software Factory, we're getting solutions in place. We already have a few solutions in place, but looking how we continue to improve. But for the rest of the Department of Defense, I think it really helped be able to push some of those initiatives forward for folks that maybe wanted to look at those particular aspects, but didn't have the help or the people on board to want to make that change.
Great, thank you for that. Next up, we'll go with you, Stacy.
Hi, I'm Stacy Watson, and I'm the ESD Director for the Army CHESS program. So CHESS is the Army's mandatory source for COTS IT hardware, software, and services. So if anyone in the Army needed to purchase any of those items, they would come to one of those CHESS contract vehicles. So one of the, some of the challenges that we're having is to make sure that we're getting the information out to our customers if there is any issues or if there's supply issues or if there are any security issues. We just want to make sure communication is going out to our customers and ensuring that they're receiving the information as quickly as they possibly can. And we want to ensure that our contracts are meeting whatever standards or policies that it needs to ensure that we're getting quality equipment and software on our contracts. So those are some of the things that we're doing here at the CHESS program.
No, thank you for that. Next, we'll go with Crist.
Yeah, hello everyone. So, Crist here at U.S. Transportation Command, and overseeing enterprise transformation and DevOps. And it's a fancy way of saying, cloud migration activities, things like that related to that. We've been involved with Zero Trust and trying to improve the RMF process and getting into AI ops, machine learning and all that. But when it comes to this topic, we've heard some good things here, so I won't touch much more on what they've said. But however, I think, from our organization, I think we view this in a couple of different ways. Internally, where we're looking at our own applications, our own programs that we create and that we manage. And here at Transcom, we have a ton of them, of course. And how do we come up with, those dependency checks, if you will, knowing all the software that you use along the whole development process throughout your whole software supply chain for each application. And so that's something that we dig into. And I think that we have some immediate ways to get that done. We have some immediate ways to get, let's say, an SBOM internally to say, okay, this is what we have, this is what we're using. And then I'll go into some details a little bit later on how we can make that more effective. But I think where maybe Dan comes in here with Anchor and the team is on the vendor side of the house. So that's kind of how I'm viewing this, is internally our applications, and then of course our vendors who we work with. What are they using? What are their dependencies? What are the software that they depend on, of course, and us understanding what that is. So those are the two things I think that we're working through. Internally, I think we're getting a better grasp of how we're going to do this and how we're going to move forward, and then standardize that process. But we certainly are looking to our vendors to help us when it comes to being perhaps a little more transparent in terms of what it is that they're using.
Great, thank you. And Dan, I know you see a lot across industry, across government. How are federal agencies coming along on this topic?
Yes, thank you. And I think the sort of responses to your initial question from the panel here are very much representative of the kind of experience we've been having at Anchor. So at Anchor, we actually make technology that helps organizations be able to look at their software assets and generate this type of software bill of materials, and then manage that information and communicate it, really importantly. And that's a topic I think we might get into. And from our experience, a lot of the programs we've been working with in the federal side are very far along, right? It's been very impressive and sort of interesting for us to see that the federal programs that we work with are actually a lot further along in many ways than some of the even commercial side of the house. We work with all sorts of different organizations at different levels and maturity levels, but at the end of the day, there's so much software being generated these days, and how dynamic it is, how much open source is coming in, how many dependencies, how often they change, has just rapidly increased over the past several years. And that's really what our technology and our biggest challenge is in front of us. And we're trying to make solutions to some of these problems.
Great, thank you for that. And so my first question is the role of software bill of materials in the executive order. My question is, what do I do with a software bill of materials, and what is the role of the software bill of materials in cybersecurity practices? We've had a lot of different executive orders come out. We've had the Cyber EO, we've had the Zero Trust order out. Neil, how do you harmonize this and pull this all together in a one comprehensive strategy? Oh yeah, by the way, you're unrolling your own strategies, right?
Right, exactly. And I think that's a great point. Like as Angel mentioned, right, I think it is, I think we are far along in certain cases, but like Log4j is a good example, right? I mean, we are a big open source community users, big time. We open source first is our mantra. We do have some SaaS providers who we work with, but on the whole, we are a custom development shop. That's what we try to do. And what that means is you are developing not open source software. So we have a very robust pipeline, DevSecOps pipeline, very detailed, been in for a while. We do lot of checks and balances within that. And as you mentioned, especially for us, the agency who we are at the edges, right? A lot. We are the edge computing for us is becoming a very, very prominent feature for us right now. As you can imagine, about even 5 years back, we call it the operation technology, where sensors or drones, those are independent systems which were not really interacting with from the IT component. Now there's software everywhere, right? Now, like the previous gentleman mentioned, that with the software everywhere, and what is happening is that is generating a bunch of things, which includes network connections, including it's also, it's also creating storage challenges. So because of that, the whole comprehensive architecture for us, what we have done is we have created what is called a technical reference architecture. That entails two components. One is this operation component we just talked about, where we are marrying sensors, drones, planes, helicopters, whatever CBP has, right? Which we do along with the information technology, because everything is now generating data, as you can imagine, right? So we need to keep a track of that. The network component to that. So zero trust, I call it zero trust in two ways, right? Horizontal and vertical zero trust, right? You need to have you need to figure out your internal inside threats and external components of that. And software, of course, everywhere across the board is what makes it work. But there are challenges with that. And we are seeing supply chain. I know supply chain we talked about goods, but there's also a supply chain within the software development also. We need to figure out where these softwares are getting developed, right? We have seen some interesting components with some of the IDEs, what we use. We have seen some challenges a few years back. DHS came out with some rulings on those things, as you know. So it is very, very challenging, I can tell you that. And I'm not giving you any information internal. I mean, what you read in the news of all the external threats we have within the United States, other countries who are trying to do some harm to us, that is real. That's real stuff. So because of that, it's especially we are CBP, we are a front line, and we call ourselves first responders for a reason. And because of that, software development, creating the software bill of material, what that looks like, and making sure that checks and balances across the board is where we are. We have streamlined a lot of those things. We are definitely getting there, but there's still challenges and other pieces of the money funding perspective, right? If we get more money, I think we can do more. But at the end of the day, it's I like tell everybody else, the bad person has to get it right once, but we all have to be on all the time. So software bill of material, making sure that they're good and secure is our primary mission.
Right. Thank you. Perfect. That was a great answer. Angel, I know we're not in the days of this big waterfall development and we have time before we do anything. You guys are producing, you all are producing software on a continuous basis. How challenging is it for you as CISO to keep up with all this?
It's challenging. I would say anyone that works in the cybersecurity field, it's challenging. It doesn't matter what your title is. I think we all feel that same pain. The title is just a title. We all play a different role in the aspect, but the constant threat landscape that consistently changes challenges us. And like Log4j is a great example. Vulnerability came out. By the time the Army pushed down that the vulnerability was out, people were already impacted. We were not, just for the record. But it's challenging and it's stressful. And I think, anyone that works in this field definitely has probably aged. I don't know. What do you guys say? Like 5 years in the past year? We've all aged about 5 years. Yeah, they're all laughing. So the answer, 5 years in the past year. It's challenging.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Thank you for that. And Stacy?
From the chess perspective, it's very challenging because, like I mentioned earlier, we're putting together master contracts for the Army to use. And so the challenging part for us is to make sure that we have the right mix of software on our contracts. And they've gone through that checks and balances. And a lot of people come to think that if it's on a chess contract, that it's already done all the checks and balances and it can be loaded to any network. That's not a true statement. So making sure our customers understand that they're still got to go out and do their checks and balances, go through that whole RMF process before they load pieces of equipment to their contracts. Pieces of equipment to their network. And so we're trying to ensure that the whole Army, we're supplying the Army with COTS IT hardware. We're not developing, for my ABC, we're not developing the software. We're providing the commercial off the shelf. So we're ensuring that software already comes with some type of some checks and balances prior to the customers being able to purchase that type of software.
I want to jump in on what Stacey said right there, because I feel like we don't talk about it enough. Understanding and receiving relevant documentation from our vendors and suppliers has always been a constraint for us in the government. And having that information necessary to safely integrate into our suppliers, into our work streams is critical for our compliance. And it's a lot of work. So like Stacey's team can go out and they're going to do like the first pass, and then we need to do the second pass. And then before you implement it, you need to do a third pass, because the reality is we cannot keep up to date with technology as fast as technology changes. The technology changes so rapidly that we're not able, by the time Stacey's passed it through the first check and I get it, they could be on 5 versions ahead, and it has significantly changed. And it's a challenge we always have.
I think that's a very interesting point, and I completely agree that it's worth highlighting. And it's something we've also seen, from our perspective at Anchor. We're looking at enabling software suppliers to be able to provide this level of information, which is something you can generate just having been given some software. But if the suppliers start generating that information, you might get even better information because they're closer to their own intellectual property and things like that. And so what we're looking at now is techniques off the back of the executive order, which specifies, some more rigorous recommendations to the private sector to actually start providing better information, higher fidelity information automatically that's supplied with every single piece of software that flows into the federal programs, right? And so what we're looking to try to do is enable the private sector to do that effectively and in ways that can be communicated across those organizational boundaries.
Yeah, it'd be almost better that it's an auto push out and you can see it and it's just an automatic thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Chris, anything you want to add?
A lot covered here. A lot of good stuff. And Angel actually touched the last couple of questions. She actually touched on a couple of things that stood out to me, where they were able to resolve the concern. But she did mention something that I caught on to. It's not that they're a massive organization, so they can probably pivot. But I think that, in our organization, we have applications that are substantial, they're very, very large. They have a ton of people involved with development and very, very large applications. And let's say they're legacy based. Let's just call it legacy based. Then we have some other applications that are more modern. They're, as Sunil mentioned, they're leveraging DevSecOps practices. They've broken things down to microservices. They've containerized. They can use the service mesh. All of those other things that we know and love when it comes to modernization. Those types of applications can pivot far more quickly than one that isn't there. And so, as Sunil put up his thumbs up there, I think that when it comes to software bill of materials, what's really great about an SBOM is that, and Dan and I talked about this the other day, but it's a snapshot in time. And so you get like kind of in the research, they call it a cross-sectional study, right? But it's a snapshot in time of what you have. But to Angel's point and Stacey's point, stuff moves so fast. And so you need to move towards a modern way of developing software applications. In my organization, I'm thinking of how we're developing all these applications. If we have someone that is consistently rebuilding their application because that's the way their application is built, and every time you rebuild, you're incorporating new software, maybe you're updating more often, you're patching more often because you can, rather than a legacy-based way where maybe you put something in place, you let it sit for 3 years, you've continued to develop since then, and now, we have a problem with that product. Well, gosh, we haven't done anything with it for 3 years. You have a challenge, right? It's really difficult to be agile and to change quickly when you're like that. So that's just my perspective.
Fantastic. Great point. We're going to do a few polls here. If we can pop up the first one, get our audience involved. And once again, we got the Q&A down there. I think we've got multiple choice going now. We've evolved our polls to that. And I don't know, sometimes Zoom for government, we have hosts and panelists cannot vote. Sometimes they can vote. Looks like we can't vote today. I don't know what changed, but Which of the following best practices for container security have you implemented? Choose all that apply. Private registries, repos for vetted images, scanning at multiple stages of the development process, policy-based controls to reduce false positive, leveraging and software bill of materials, security champions in our development teams, not using containers, don't know, not sure. I didn't ever like these kind of tests when if you had like 4, to me, this might trip me up a little bit. So anyway, let's see what we have. Okay. A little bit all over the place. Don't know, not sure. I think that's, I don't think we have this quite solved yet. It looks like to me anyway. Any surprises on that first poll? Or it seemed like to me, this is we do this all the time. Usually you get pretty good knowledge of a topic to a degree, right?
Yeah, I'm a little surprised, Tom, to be honest with you, with the answer with the last one, that don't know kind of thing, right? Because this is like basic stuff now. This is required for us to be secure in the federal government, right? So I'm hoping that this is not the norm. So.
Yep. We might have to start a working group in this area. For those of you who've been on some of our working groups, it's starting to formulate in my mind. Can we do the next question, please? Which of the following compliance standard must your organization meet? All right. Okay. Interesting. We'll see how many executive branch folks. And if you are with a private industry, just put the agency that you're working with. Maybe do that. So let's see what this poll results comes up with. Interesting.
Yeah.
All over the place. Okay. FedRAMP 42%. Okay. Any comments out of that one? I was just kind of surprised. I thought everybody would click everything.
Yeah. I'm actually I want to talk to those organizations that don't have to deal with the risk management framework, because I'm envious as heck. I'll tell you that much.
Well.
Yeah, that's
You
yep. You
RMF is a framework, and within that framework, you can basically help yourself. I always look at RMF instead of being a constraint of like an avenue of empowerment, because there are rules and regulations inside of there, right? You've got to play by these guardrails, but also within those guardrails, you can do a lot of other things. And I think I would challenge you to change your mind of how you look at RMF and start, how can you gamify it? Because when you do that, you're like, how can you almost hack the system, right? How can you make this better? How can you challenge your organization to play within the boundaries, but also challenge it? Because you're not just boxed in. You can think outside the box there. So yeah, I would challenge you for that, Chris.
No, thank you, Angel. And so I appreciate that. And so with everything, I guess there's context, right? I certainly believe in the risk management framework. I think it's a fantastic thing. There are some DoD organizations that have been able to achieve a continuous ATO to show that they're meeting the intent of the RMF process. I say that jokingly, because when you're an organization as large as ours, and when you have different divisions that have different priorities, you have a division that's primarily involved with security and leading the RMF process. And so when you want to move forward with the DevSecOps methodology to achieving a continuous ATO or RMF, but they are unwilling to accept that, then you're in a different situation. And then the RMF process becomes a challenge, right? So I'm with you 100%. But when you have others that, that becomes a challenge, right? As you're working with folks that feel like RMF should be accomplished this way, but you know that it can be accomplished another way. Yeah, that's when it gets difficult.
It's a really interesting point too, and coming from my perspective, as a vendor is trying to enable organizations to achieve all of those compliance standards. Initially, to be honest, I had thought that a lot of these compliance standards are going to be far more prescriptive in terms of exactly an implementation than they turned out to be. Over the years, I've I've looked into these things, and even in preparation for this panel, I was reading through a number of those compliance standards again to refresh my knowledge. And there is definitely flexibility baked in, and I love this idea of gamifying, right? Because there are different ways that you can map to your own organization to comply with a lot of the requirements within the standards. And that's actually affected the way that we build our own software. Our policies are very flexible, right? You can implement compliance with a control in one way or another way, and they're both completely satisfactory. And so there has to be a lot of flexibility in how organizations address these things as well.
Angel, I want to go back to you. How do you gamify risk management framework compliance? I love it. I love the concept.
Well, I'm not going to give all my secrets away. So I come from Kessel Run. We had one of the first, not the first, I don't think, I can't say that fully because I haven't done my research that, but we definitely had a CATO before a lot of other folks did. And we were able to, how do we get people excited about looking at compliance and get them knowing what they're really working for? So a lot of the times I feel like when people have to answer STIGs, controls, whatever terminology you're going to use, you've got to answer a thing. It's a check. It's a basically like a toll booth in order to continue going, right? Like you have to make sure that you meet this standard so that you don't fall off the guardrails, so that you don't fall off the cliff while you're driving, right? So you have to make people interested in understanding the why. Why do we have this? What could happen? What do you think could happen? And you start talking to the organization in that way. And one of the greatest things that I think came out of Kessel Run was really helping developers understand the why you're doing things and help them think of all of the avenues that could happen if things went right and if everything went wrong. And then they start to change their mindset in that aspect. We did little gamification things, gave away little prizes, gave away awards. We had like a little stuffed animal that went around different desks. Again, we were not as large as, some of the other organizations. So it's easier to kind of get that and help the people that aren't 100% on board, to sit with them, to help them, to mentor them, to nurture their thoughts and directions and hear them, and then continuously showing them like, what do you think about this? And having those discussions. In order to change someone's mind and framework like that, it's just so much work. Like that could be someone's full-time job, Chris. I feel like you probably need like a team of folks that would want to come in and work with your teams to help understand that methodology and that culture, to just shift that, to be able to even gamify something like RMF.
Yeah, Angel, thank you so much. And honestly, I'm using your example of Kessel Run, so thank you so much for being a part of that. I've been using that example here in our command, as well as what Platform One has done, in general with their party bus, capability, and then some other organizations like Team Bespin, and showing that this can be done. So I'm really thankful that you guys led the way on that. I think that we're making some progress, right? We're working with our CISO, but for most organizations out there, you're really going to be dependent on your AO. Kind of the bottom line there is your AO willing to accept the risk and willing to accept it the way that you present it? And that's a part of our challenge. It's not that our AO isn't willing, but like you're alluding to there, Angel, you certainly need a lot of resources to convince those that have been dealing with RMF and the way that it's been for many, many years, and to show them that there's perhaps a better way of getting it done.
Yeah. Cybersecurity is tough. It's brutal. It's a lot of work. People are staying up late at night. I like the idea of gamification. Let's make it a little bit light, make it a little bit of fun somehow, and do that. So we're starting to get some questions in. This one's a pretty good one. There's been quite a bit of emphasis on preventing vulnerable software from being deployed into production, but we know that's not always 100% effective. We've had a vulnerable software makes it through the wickets. Log4j is an example. We've had SolarWinds. We've had other things like that. What is our strategy for preventing vulnerable software from being exploited in production? I'm going to start off with you, Dan, as a vendor.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of sort of depth, I think, to that question. I think from a certain perspective, if we start at some of the base cases, right? So the Log4j example is very interesting because, that was software that existed in a lot of places, and it had a vulnerability in it, but nobody knew about it. So it's kind of like if the tree falls in the forest, was it vulnerable? But it's a good example because no vulnerability scanner would flag that vulnerability because it wasn't known that it was vulnerable. So it was perfectly safe at the time it was deployed, and only later did it become exploitable. So from our perspective, and this is kind of maps back to that concept of SBOMs. The very first thing we need to know when something like this comes up is, not just the assessment of the vulnerability, and, organizations like NIST and others can put this information together to inform everybody about what exactly is going on. But what organizations who are running software and what programs need to do first is say, are we vulnerable? Right. And a very good way to do that is imagine you had comprehensive software bills of materials for every single software component running in your environment right now, and last week, and the month before, and maybe 3 months before, because maybe that vulnerability had been being exploited far before it was made aware to the public. The only way to do that is by having all of the data available about every single software component and what it is made of, right, in the form of a software bill of materials. So we have to start there, right? Knowledge and insight is where we begin. And that gives everybody a picture within your organization of where these things are happening. And typically then you can start to implement the remediation tactic, whether it's doing some forensics, putting network guards in place, dynamically updating that software, putting firewalls around it so that it's shut off, depending on where the software is running, very different remediation tactics, but you have to know where it is and where it's been.
So maybe Sunil, how much can you even do around this area?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It's almost like a black swan, right?
No, it is. But, see, again, the thing which you can do, like, we just heard Log4j did exist and people exploited that, right? Folks exploited that, and that's the reason. And there is, there's no perfect software, right? There's always things which is, it has holes, it has issues, and some folks know how to exploit that. And, and that's why we got Log4j. But I think at the end of the day, right, I think best we can do is every component of the software delivery model, we talked about an agile model we talked about, is in your pipeline, the only way we can do is every level is, is secure, and you're running through scans what it needs to be, and check against the known issues, which, which we do look at that, making sure if you have all the libraries we are using has any issues. Again, that's not real time, as you know, things are happening at the back. We do even a step ahead. We don't get anything directly from the Git repos, and we try and scan everything what we get, especially the library, including the IDEs. IDEs also has constant updates for the libraries, right? So all the common IDEs what we use, we do make sure that we do a scanning of those. And again, as I said, Log4j is a great example. We keep talking about it, but that was, we completely took us by surprise, right? As Angel said, there's a huge issue. I tell you, hundreds of systems we had to take care of, as you know, and there were 2 versions of that. First, we fixed one, then the second one came in, right? So we had multiple versions we had to fix of Log4j. So the only thing we can do is, as the best we can, make checks. That's why I totally believe that from the vendor perspective, right? The supply chain where they are producing the software from, they need to do their own checks and balances before the software comes to us, right? That's from the, vendor perspective, but open source is a different story, right? And that's why we have scanning tools, scanning softwares and various ways of doing it. And we do the best we can. But as I mentioned earlier, the bad people have to be just one step ahead of us, right? And that's where the issue is. But, it's a challenge, and, and that's our job in the federal government, making sure we keep everybody safe and, and we deliver good software for our customers.
Great. And Stacy, I know you're selling, you're allowing, the military to buy software. What happens in the event of an issue? I know this isn't your first rodeo. This has happened in many cases, right? How do you react to that to let your customers know what's going on?
So Chess, luckily we have a pretty great database system right now that we can pull data from, and we have a record of who's purchased that software off of our contract vehicles. So we can go out to those individuals and give them a notification and let them know that there is a vulnerability, and so they can assess their risk, so they can understand if they need to do a rip and replacement or whatever they got to do with that piece of software. So communicating to our customers, the big thing, so to make sure that the Army is communicating as a total environment, and they're getting the data to everyone when there is a vulnerability of a piece of software. That's a big issue. There's a lot of people finding vulnerabilities, but a lot of us don't know that. So communicating back to our customers and saying, hey, there is a problem, there's a vulnerability, there's some issues, there's even a supply chain issue, letting our customers know that those type of things exist, so that they can assess whatever they got to do to their systems, and ensuring that they're not at any risk with their systems or their development or deployment at that time. So we're trying to educate, communicate, do as much as we possibly can on our side to let them know when we see that they purchased those items, and or if there's a future purchase that's coming up for those items, they're aware of those prior to their purchasing.
Right. You probably have better records than the customer has themselves. So I think you perform a vital role there. Thank you. Angel?
So I'm obviously concerned about purchasing stuff that might have vulnerabilities in it, but if that's where I'm going to start, I'm never going to get anything into production, because eventually everything's going to have a vulnerability, right? Everything's going to need a patch. Everything's going to be an update. Where I'm primarily concerned is, how do we remediate? How do we respond? When this comes out, can we respond on time? Having an SBOM, being able to pull that information, because I can do all the compliance check. Stacy can go through, do her magic. I can go through, do my magic. My team can go through, do their magic. And then 2 weeks later, after it's deployed, something horrible happens. What matters is being able to rapidly respond when that happens. Because everything eventually is going to have an urgent upgrade, a CVE, a patch that needs to get pushed out, whether it impacts you or doesn't impact you. So I'm really primarily focused on, I want to make sure I'm getting good, safe, secure software into my system. But how do I respond when that good, safe software that I put in my system that I thought was never going to do any wrong does do something wrong? How do I fix it? How do we approach it from that aspect? So that's where I'm primarily focused on. I think a lot of us feel that same pain too, because you can do all the RMF, you can do all the FedRAMP, you can have your AO sign off on the risk, you can do all of that. But if you can't patch Log4j in, a reasonable amount of time, depending on the size of your system, right? Shout out to all the legacy folks that are holding it down for systems that are years old, that are very complex. Like, we would not be here without y'all. So I have a big heart for all of my legacy folks. But we have to be able to make sure that we can respond quickly when something goes wrong, and being able to detect stuff quickly when something goes wrong.
Completely agree with Angel. That's exactly where I think that is the right answer, is to how we respond to it. Because I'm telling you, we just cannot keep up. Again, I'll be honest with you, we just cannot keep up. It's impossible. So the way we react to this is where I think the challenge is going to be, and how fast we react to it. We had a Tiger team put together for this Log4j. As Angel mentioned, same thing for us. 24/7, we were working just before Christmas, right through New Year's, as you know, that's where it came out. So yep, that's where we are right now.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the right answer. I mean, you can't stop everything. I mean, if these things take the whole industry by storm, it's not like one individual agency is going to have some kind of special way to prevent it. Chris, anything else you want to add? I didn't give you an opportunity there.
It's funny. Angel said it very well. And it goes back to what I was saying about the programs. And I think that you got to exercise those muscles, right? And so if you have a development team, or if you have an application, what have you, consistently updating, making sure that they're doing what they need to do on a consistent basis. If they're in that situation, be able to do that, then continue to do so that when something does come up, you already got the practice. You can get it down, rather than, we haven't messed with that for 3 years, right? So certainly a big part of being responsive, for sure.
Great, thank you. Let's go to a couple more poll questions. I don't want to get in trouble with the CP people. I worry about a lot of things. That's probably right up there on my list anyway. One of the following compliance standard, what is your top focus right now? Okay. Okay, this is single choice now. So we kind of listed these before, but we've kind of narrowed it down a little bit. All right, I think we've had enough time. I assume everybody's quick on the trigger. Okay.
Mhm.
That's I'll tell you what, that doesn't surprise me. Having done about 3 events a week, that's what everybody talks about is the cybersecurity executive order. Seems to me anyway, it seems to be the predominant thing. Great. Let me get to, we have a couple more questions in here. With an increase in the number of applications to provide services to consumers, both inside and outside of your organization, APIs are an increasing attack surface for malicious actors. What are you doing to address API security? This seems to be a recurring theme, and it probably aligns with zero trust. Anybody want to take a shot at that? I don't think we have to have everybody talk about it. Sunil, you look like you want to say something?
Sure, absolutely. So yeah, so we are a big API centric, an API first agency. So especially we do deal with outside entities, as you can imagine, airlines, shipping, all those components, right, as you can imagine. So for us, that plays a very important role. So that's a great question on the API security. So it's a token based, we have, I can't talk any specific vendor here, but we are doing a pretty good job there, and it's all secure with a token based architecture where you need to secure certain things to get access. We have 2FA built in there, so a lot of component within, especially with as the API management is concerned. We do have standards what we have set out and given out to other folks also. So we are a PubSub model where they can consume and also we can consume from them. But from end of the day, again, this is a vendor-based architecture because some of the you have an option of doing it yourself. There are some open source communities which gives you an option to do this.
Yeah.
But what we have gone to a few vendors and using their architecture because of security and other things what we just talked about. It's a very important component to that, and more. And also, as you see, as a service, wherever you provide the microservices, everything what you're providing, this API internally also plays a very, very major role, externally and internally, right? So my earlier comments about horizontal and vertical zero trust plays a role within this API architecture and API management.
Great. Anybody else want to add anything to that? Okay. We have a question around I don't know if it's an either or, I'm not quite sure if I understand it, but has your organization been effective in implementing software bill of material standards in code development or in automating software bill of materials for purchase software? Or is it both? I guess that would be the third one, right? Chris, is it kind of both, or is there most folks are buying software and create? I know your organization creates software. I know most of the organizations. I mean, Stacy's group procures the software, but it's kind of like both, right? How let's say this, how do you handle each of those instances? The buying of the software and then the development of the software.
From the buying of the software, we're constantly having to, look at it from different perspectives. Because for the Army chest, we're doing an enterprise type of purchasing, and we're looking at it from all Army. And so depending on where that software is going to be loaded or developed or implemented, we have to look at it from different levels. So if it's going to be into a national security system, or if it's just going into a warehouse. So we're looking at software from all perspectives, and we're trying to see what the vulnerabilities could have been or are. And so we're trying to, I guess for us, we're trying to manage it all, trying to come up with a good solution that will fit a big picture, which it can't. That's one of the problems that we're having. It can't fit, the Band-Aid can't go on it and fit everybody. We got it. So I don't know, that's the biggest challenge that we're having right now is the purchasing of it and putting it on contract doing that at the enterprise levels. How do we do that when that piece of software could be in multiple different locations and being utilized for multiple different purposes.
It would seem to me that if you're like, go ahead, Dan.
I was just going to jump in really quick, and say that, I do think it's a very interesting question, that, has an organization, or how effective have organizations been so far in implementing SBOM standards for development or procurement. And, I do want to just, perhaps put down that there are technologies, there's open source tools, there's vendor products like the stuff that Anchor provides that can really start to help with some of this, right? This is stuff that you can point at a piece of software and it will generate a software bill of materials. And some of our products will manage that information for you and allow you to query it and do things like that. There's open source tools that really fast moving, smaller teams that aren't quite ready to go for larger platforms can start to explore this process, right? So I just kind of want to put out there that, regardless of where you are on the journey or what you think about software bill of materials today, right? It's, in my opinion, it's worth exploring the technology space. There's some very good tools out there for doing this stuff.
Great. I think we have like maybe one more poll question. We can pop that up. Has your organization begun to create and store a software bill of materials as a result of the new executive order on improving cybersecurity? Okay, this is a good question. Let's see. We'll give it a second and then go ahead and see what we have. Okay. All right. I think we got a lot of work left on this topic, folks. You're the trailblazers, everybody on this podcast, on this webinar. Great. Okay. Wow, this hour is going by quickly. What else do we need to? I want to go through each of the panelists in kind of like maybe some other points that we didn't get the opportunity to cover that keeps you awake at night on this topic. Maybe we'll start off with you, Angel.
So I just want to say the poll that just came up, for those people who don't know, I challenge you, if you don't know because you're not in a position of a need to know and you're not in it, right? So like if you are working in acquisitions and you're procuring software, you might not know if the team has already implemented that or not. Go ask your organization, go ask the folks that you work with, are we doing this? Have we already done it? These executive orders come out, and I'll be honest with you, I see them on LinkedIn before I hear about them in any of my government comps. So like, it is hard for us to keep up to date with all the new memos, everything that's being pushed out. You have to have a good trusted circle of folks, follow the right people on LinkedIn to make sure you're getting all of that. And if you don't know and you're out listening to this talk right now, like follow me on LinkedIn, tell me, send me a message, tell me you don't know where to go find things. I'll point you in the right direction and help you out, because I feel like together we're all in this ecosystem, and you get lost when you're trying to develop a lot of things. And then they're like, hey, go do this executive order, go do this executive order. This new memo came out, that new memo came out, and you still have your day-to-day job. It can feel very frustrating and very taxing for a lot of folks who might feel like they're underwater. So just know, I think I can speak for everyone on the panel here. Shoot us messages on LinkedIn. I think we'll point you to the direction and the information that we have and try to help you. Things that keep me up at night. Well, there's two major countries that keep me up at night, I would say, as well as everyone else on the panel. I think it's the not feeling like I can move, or as an organization, we can move as fast as the technology can move. That, oh, something happens and you're like, oh, wish we could have done that. Yep, we knew that. That was on the roadmap for 2 weeks. That's on the roadmap for 3 months. And all of a sudden it becomes a priority. I would say for everyone, technology moves so fast that you will never be able to keep up. And as long as you do the best that you can do and continue on with that attitude, you will be successful. But things that keep me up at night, there's just way too many to list. So I will pass it over to Stacy for what keeps her up at night.
You got it. Go ahead, Stacy.
What keeps me up at night? So one of the challenges that we have is, I'm on the purchasing side, is just the fact that people are purchasing those items from everywhere, from any vehicle, any contract, from Best Buy, Walmart, wherever. Those are the type of things that keep me up at night. And the individuals that are purchasing those items are not doing any type of background check or making sure their equipment is going, I mean, their software is going through any kind of, reciprocity process. So, and they're getting loaded to our network. That's one of the biggest things that are keeping me up at night. And there's no recourse for them in those agreements that they're purchasing, because they haven't put those mandatory clauses that are supposed to be in those contracts to say, if we do find some type of vulnerability or their systems have been hacked or whatever, that whatever they need to come back and let us know, putting that onus back onto the contractors to give us that type of information back when those things do happen. So, another thing that probably keeps me up at night is the fact that the policies hadn't caught up with the technology yet. When we have to go through and identify someone that has actually have a vulnerability, to get to that point, or to even say we can't purchase them, or they can't go on the Army's network or go any network, by the time it's gone through that process, it's already been deployed in so many different locations. So it comes to a situation at that point, we need policy to speed up or to change so we can address those issues as soon as we possibly can. So those are the type of things that keep me up at night. Chris?
Stacey, what do you estimate, like in the Army, that people buy things off of official Army contract vehicles, where you have a process for trying to ensure the software is safe? What do you all have a number of just impact cards or whatever they call them now? I mean,
well, you got them in both ways. You got individuals using their government purchase cards, and you got individuals just placing a GSA contract. Not trying to say anything bad about GSA, but their contracts are going to have everything for whatever organization or whatever anybody could possibly need. So that's their mission, is to make sure that they have all the stuff listed. But there's nobody out there doing a check and balance on those pieces of equipment or software that they're purchasing from those contracts. So that's some of the challenges that we're having. So now the onus is going to go on to the contracting officer to ensure that he or she is checking that, and they have no idea. At that level, they're just trying to understand their normal policies that they have to put in their contracts. So they have not gone through or understand what they even need to identify in their contracts to make those purchases valid when they're purchasing from all those other types of vehicles. So that's some of the challenges that we're having.
Great. Thank you for that clarification, Stacey. Chris.
Yeah, what keeps me up at night, perhaps the theme of the day, maybe speed. How quickly can we move and adapt, and that's what gets me for sure in our organization, for sure. Transcom's 138,000 employees, and we have a ton of applications, and so as to Angel's point on those legacy programs and those maintaining them, yeah, we're certainly sitting on the shoulders of what they've done, and hats off to them for sure. But moving towards newer methodologies. I'm not saying that DevSecOps is the cure-all, but it can certainly help in a lot of ways. But DevSecOps, you're changing the way development's done. You're changing what security looks like. You're changing what operations looks like. And when you have people that have been operators or security folks for many, many years, it's just tough, right, to make the change. You have to do a lot of education. You can't just expect someone to come off the street and know DevSecOps just like that, right? Or you can't expect for them to learn it within a few days. So for me, I think that's a part of the challenge, is how quickly can we educate it? How quickly can we get people to adapt and to learn something new so that we can move forward, so that we have a better opportunity to address executive orders on things like SBOM and Zero Trust.
Right, great. Thank you, Chris. And Anil, what doesn't keep you awake at night? All the things that you have going on there. It's probably a better question, but what keeps you awake at night?
Yes, I think pretty much attributed to everybody what they're saying. Very similar, but one thing I would add is being the way we are with the jobs we have, being the CTO of the agency, right? The technology decisions I make has a very profound impact on the mission, and that definitely has we bear a lot of weight on that one. Because see, whatever we are doing, it's our job. My job is to make sure our agents and officers in the field who are putting their lives on the line every day to keep us safe in the U.S. I'm providing them the right tools to do their job. The technology is changing so fast across the board. I think everybody agrees on that. That's where I feel a lot of challenges. I'm very, very technical. I come from the private sector. I've been in the government for 3 years, but we try and rectify that as fast as possible. So that definitely is one of the things which has keeps me up for night for sure. So
Great, thank you, and thank you all to the government people that are. I know you put a lot of time into this and a lot of concern, and thank you for doing this. Dan, I'm going to give you the last word on this panel. It went by real quick. Thank you for helping us with this. Great topic.
I wanted to reflect, the gratitude to all the panelists and attendees today for coming and engaging in this very important discussion. And I think, that the last sentiment here about, how fast technology is moving, that's something that does keep me up at night as well, right? These are big challenges, and my biggest fear is that we get the sense of being overwhelmed by how fast things are moving. But at the same time, I almost see it as my responsibility, right, as a startup company, to move just as fast, not to develop software that does the things, but to develop software that helps secure the software that's doing the things. And so, I would encourage people to look at the technology that's out there and to take that first step, because we don't have to get to the end goal right away. We can start to take these steps, start generating SBOMs tomorrow, right? That's something that you can try to do. And then from there, then you start to think about how to store them, how to search them, and how to use them, and all of that. But there is definitely a path. And, I'd encourage everybody to work with folks like myself and reach out to try to take that step.
Great. Well, thank you, Sunil, Angel, Chris, Stacy, and Dan. This has been a great panel. I tried to troubleshoot my camera up to and hitting it, but that didn't work. I've been working on fixing PCs. I started my career as an intern at the Department of Labor fixing PCs. I think I had to restart my computer, and hopefully it'll come back on. Oh, well, been doing nothing. Something's going to have to screw up. See, that's what happens. The black swan event happens. Thank you all. So we're going to put a poll up. The last poll. Do you want your CPE credits? There you go.
Everyone's going to say
Everybody
yes.
can get that. Everybody's going to say yes. Okay, our next event. It's the ATARC Hyper Automation Breakfast Summit. Yes, we are diving into being back in person. We actually had our annual event last week, and we actually had an event yesterday. So we're kind of starting to get back, getting some good government attendance. But if you're interested in this event, please register. And that will be in next week, I guess. Well, thank you all. Thank you to the audience. Great questions. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
thank you.